Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, glad you're back on the Investigative Journal. On this Friday, the week is almost over, and we've got a lot to cover today. I want to start in the first half hour by talking about why is the media diverting attention from at least 35 known jihadi Muslim extremist camps in America. And that question we've dealt with before on this show. And we've talked about a number of these camps that are being allowed, even by the FBI, to exist here. And I'm going to attack this story first, and I think we can explain it starting with Turkey and what's going on in that country. Now, we know that the financial markets have been collapsing the last few days because of the instability in Turkey regarding the monetary system there. Now, the president of Turkey and the American State Department is in a battle right now over two things. The president of Turkey wants us to release we consider him to be a moderate Muslim, a very influential one named Fethullah Gulen, who the Turkish president says was instrumental in the recent coup in Turkey, and for his crimes he wants America to release him. Now, we've talked about him many times now. In exchange, America wants Turkey to release a pastor who's been held in custody there. His name is Andrew Brunson. And so Turkey is saying, we'll give you Brunson, you give us Gulen. Now, that should be an easy trade-off, right? Especially since Fethullah Gulen isn't a moderate, but an extremist Muslim. So let's talk about him first. He was brought over here in the 90s by the Clintons, and he has now been given millions and millions in taxpayer money to run certain what's considered in the mainstream moderate Muslim schools. But when you understand his history, it isn't moderate. It is extremist Muslim teachings going on in America, and the American taxpayers are funding it. Now, Gulen lives in a villa in the Pocono Mountains, brought here in the 90s by Clinton. Now, his history, we talked about it in, I think it was 2004. We first got on the story of the Gulen movement in Norway and up in Europe and what exactly he was doing there. And there's no secret over there and in Turkey that he is not a moderate. He's an extremist who pushes Sharia law. He's been embedded here in America since the 90s. And guess what? If Trump was serious about getting rid of extreme Islamic terrorism, he would turn over Gulen immediately. No president has. He's been protected by every president, including Obama, Bush, Clinton, and now Trump. And it's coming to a head, and you're not getting the story from the mainstream correctly because no one's telling you exactly who this man is. And so what the president of Turkey is saying is Fethullah Gulen is an extremist who basically was behind the coup in his country, and he wants him turned over, and in turn he will turn over Andrew Brunson, an American pastor, Presbyterian pastor, who is now being held by the Turkish government. So we have this standoff going on. But I think this explains why we allow terrorism to exist in this country. Because our politicians, including Trump and the mainstream media on the right and the left, will not give you the truth about who Gulen is. And if they were serious about getting rid of extreme Islam from this country, they would turn over Gulen as we speak right now. Now, who's Andrew Brunson? Gulen says, look, I'll turn over this pastor if you give me Gulen. And for more than 2 decades, Andrew Brunson, a pastor, lived a quiet life in Izmir in Turkey. Every Sunday he preached to a Presbyterian congregation of about 24 people at a modest Izmar Resurrection Church in the city center. Himself, his wife, 3 children had made the city in western Turkey for almost 2 decades their home. He's 50 years old, he's from North Carolina, and he could have never thought he would find himself at the center of a major diplomatic impasse between Washington and Ankara, the fallout from which has, in part, pushed Turkey's economy to the brink. Turkey was in the midst of a massive purge of suspected opponents of the ruling AK party when Brunson attempted to renew his residency visa in October 2016. Now, we know that that coup attempt was botched, and Erdogan escaped with his life. And guess what? You get a completely different story here in America about Erdogan, about who he is, what he did, and what is going on in Turkey. So what we're seeing, Turkey has always been kind of like the firewall for extreme or radical Islam in that part of the world. And Turkey represented a very, in a sense, one of the more democratic Islamic countries on the face of the earth. We had our military bases there. And why now would we want to destroy our relationships with Turkey by protecting an Islamist terrorist that's living in the Pocono Mountains? So you see, you're getting the wrong story from your government, and you people that think Trump is the hero, he's no different than Obama. He just talks a different story. So Brunson is now being held. I mean, the poor guy is caught in the middle of this. And I hope that some people really get to the bottom of who Fethullah Gulen is. We've tried to on this show many times since 2004 or 5, talking about his activities, and I've got inside information. We've had many people on this show talking about what the Gulen movement was really like in Europe, and really what he's doing behind the scenes here in America, being funded with American money, pretending to be a moderate, when in fact he's spreading Sharia law throughout this country through these schools at high levels with intelligent people in our universities. So, without getting into any more in depth on Brunson and Gulen, please do some research on it, and I hope that sets the record straight. So, getting back to my original question in this half hour, why is the media diverting your attention from almost 35 known jihadi Muslim camps in America? Now, why doesn't the FBI and, our law enforcement clear these extremists out? Now, we talked 2 years ago regarding a small town in upstate New York where the FBI knows what's going on. We've got pictures of extreme Muslims carrying weapons throughout it's about a 30-acre compound, saying death to America. And guess what? They're allowed to do this without anybody from the FBI coming in saying, listen, not here in this country. So what does that tell you? The government is stating, we don't want extreme Muslims here, but yet they allow over 35 of these camps to exist. And now the recent one that came to light was just the other day. Now let me read a quote. 11 children, this is coming from Mark Maxlavo, and this story hit the mainstream. 11 children were rescued. Now, it was given a little bit different story on the mainstream. Were rescued from a compound in New Mexico, this just days ago, which was being run by an armed Muslim extremists. Authorities found all the children living in deplorable conditions after raiding the property, looking specifically for a 3-year-old boy. It's also been reported that they were training children up for school shootings. Why wasn't this taken care of before this? So you have a Muslim military camp, heavily armed in New Mexico. But yet our government has been attacking private Christian groups that don't pose a threat at all here. Now, what's happening is they're bringing this Sharia culture to America, and our government is allowing it. These Muslims are not looking for help. They are here to terrorize, and they are looking to conquer. And whatever you say about that, Look to Fethullah Gulen and this recent Muslim camp that's been been in the news. What are you being told by the media? You're being told that they're contributing, Fethullah Gulen's contributing to our society. Really? Let's take a look at Muslims from the East who are plundering countries that they are entering. Denmark, 450% more crimes committed by Muslims than non-Muslims. Germany, Muslim migrants committed 500,000 crimes in 6 months. This is 780 a day. Sweden, 480,000 sexual assaults in 1 year. 70% of all the rapes by less than 2% of Muslims. Extremists. Sharia law. England and Wales. Over 56% of Syrian refugees committed severe crimes in less than 1 year. Belgium. 35% of prison population is Muslim, who make up only 6% of the population. UK. Muslims fill 44% of high security prisons out of a 5% population. USA. 91.4% of Muslim refugees are on food stamps. 68.3% on cash welfare. Muslim migration has doubled in the decade since 9/11, and 60% of migrants to America favor Sharia law than to the Constitution of the United States. But they'll tell you they're here to get along, right? And all you hear from the mainstream and from Trump and everybody is how Mexico is the big problem, or how the migrants are the big problem from Central America. That's not the case. The problem is that when you look at the story in Turkey, you look at these extremist camps that are being allowed, it all goes back to this. They are allowing a mass migration of people who do not believe in freedom of speech, do not believe in freedom of religion, who, if you don't believe in Sharia law, will kill you. That's what's going on, and they're bringing them here to America, and the American government is allowing it, i.e. the example of one of the biggest extremists being touted as a Muslim moderate, Mr. Gulen, Fethullah Gulen, who the Turkish president today is saying to Trump, look, you turn him over, we'll give you Mr. Brunson, your Presbyterian pastor. But the media is making it out to be that Mr. Gulen's name isn't even mentioned because they don't want you to go there. And that is the problem here. Now, Gulen being at the top of the food chain, the guy's making millions of dollars. He's done it over in Europe, spreading extreme Islam all over the place, and we named some statistics there that the mainstream media doesn't want to deal with. And you know what's going to happen if people listen to this show and you're not educated on this subject? You're going to say that I'm being a racist because I'm talking about Islam this way. Yes, you can talk about Islam this way because if you look at Islamic countries, when they are 5 to 10% of the population, they act like sheep. But when they become 80 to 90% or 70% of the population, they became wolves in sheep's clothing, not allowing freedom of religion. So what is happening in these countries like Denmark, Germany, Sweden, England, Belgium, the UK? Let's use them at Italy, for example. They have now overrun certain parts of the city, not allowing the government or the police from those countries to enter. It's called a no zone, and they're practicing Sharia law right out in the open. So what do you think is going to happen here in America? The same exact thing. And the U.S. government and the media are making it out to be that our friends on the southern border are the big problem. And they're doing that to distract you from really the problem. And I'm just pointing it out right now. So, let's see how much time we have. Got about 10 minutes. Thank God I got some time here because this is an important story. And we have to remember, start really looking at what's going on in Europe, please. And don't just rely on Fox News or CNN or even a lot of what you hear on the alternative media. Really do your own research on this, and you're going to see. For example, every now and then, maybe once a month, I talked to a few people in Italy where I used to live, and they give me a first-hand view of what's going on there. And it's not anything like you hear here in America. Now, Trump will say, we have to get rid of extreme terrorism and ISIS and all this stuff. But if he was telling you the truth, he would immediately turn over Fethullah Gulen for Mr. Brunson, the pastor in Turkey, but they won't. That tells you what they're really all about. Now, let's move to a story that kind of really encapsulates this whole problem. Now, we're going to look at it from two issues here. One, from a wave of now transgender politicians trying to seek office. Now, this is a woman who was a man. Her name is Christine Halquist, has become the first transgender candidate to win a major political party's nomination for governor as a Democrat. She just won, defeated 3 other Democrats in Tuesday's Vermont primary. She's 62 years old. I'm not sure exactly when she switched her sex. She's a former CEO of a major company. She was chief executive of Vermont Electric Cooperative and made her transition from male to female while running the company. Okay. Now, this is just the first of a wave of LGBTQ candidates that are running. Now, what I find interesting is if we look at this, so what are you saying, Greg, that transgenders are a problem? No. What I'm saying is, where did they all come from? Now, I know it's not politically correct, but why have you seen America turn into, and Hollywood turn into, this kind of idea that this is the new normal? Look, there have always been people who have been gay. There have always been lesbians. There's always been gay men. There's always been, transgenders, but it was a minority, recognized as a minority in the world. Now, whether you were racist or not, I'm not talking about that right now. Look, the first time I ever ran into a homosexual, let me tell you how it went. And I can tell you I was not a racist against it. I worked on the newspaper in college, and this was back in the 70s. And he was a writer there and worked in the newspaper. Now, he was one of, we had a university of 17,000 men and women, right? Young men and women. In my life there were maybe a small group of homosexuals. Maybe, I'm telling you, as a journalist, so I knew the university pretty well. Now, were these people persecuted? Hell no. Was my friend on that, when I found out he was a gay man, did I consider him? Look, I told him right then, I can remember a meeting, I said, look, I'm not gay. This is not my lifestyle. That's yours, fine with me. Go ahead. He was not persecuted. He was allowed to write on the newspaper just like a non-gay man. But when did this political story start where it became almost fashionable to be gay and to be a transgender? And then you see it spread all over Hollywood. I mean, you can't go to a show right now where there's not a gay relationship going on or 2 men kissing. I mean, things like this. I know that this went on maybe for time infinity, an infinity, but not a political issue where now it becomes almost politically wrong to even mention that this is not the mainstream. It's not the new normal. This is a minority of people who have this, whatever you want to call it, a biological difference or whatever. And really, in my mind, did I ever persecute them? No. But this whole political issue has grown into a problem because this minority of people has now grown by massive numbers. And my question is, are they really lesbians and gay and transgenders, or are they just doing it to be politically fashionable? For example, I'm a man and I have trouble with women relationships, so immediately I think of myself, I can't handle women. Maybe I'll just become a woman. Do people just change because it's fashionable and politically acceptable now? Oh, you can go out and get married and be gay. You can go out and be a transgender and run for governor. Or we may have already had a first lady in office named Michelle Obama who's already a transgender, and Obama who's already gay. Now, they're not going to tell you that, but are they paving the way for this to become the new normal? Now, what I expect is this. I expect that, it's not going to change, not with the exposure it gets in Hollywood and in politics. But I don't want them teaching children that this is normal before children can really understand who they really are. I object to that. And I object to what they're doing in our educational system. And I object to what they're showing kids on TV now. Before they're even understanding who they are. They go to school and they're told, well, you can go to this men and it's a co-ed bathroom. There's no difference between men and women. This is wrong. Because there is a difference. And I'm not even discussing this from a biblical point of view. I'm not discussing it from a Christian point of view, a Buddhist point of view, an atheist point of view. I'm discussing it from a point of view of reasonableness. What are you doing? A man is born as a man. A woman is born as a woman. There is a big difference. And it is not normal for a person to be a transgender when you consider it as a very small minority. And I don't want them teaching in schools that it is. That's all I'm saying. Now, we don't know much about this transgender who's running for governor. In fact, we don't know anything about her policies outside of she believes in socialism, she hates capitalism, she thinks everybody should get free medical care through Obamacare, she believes this, that's all we know. When she was asked what socialism was, she didn't know. She couldn't give an answer. When she was asked what capitalism was, she couldn't give an answer. Now, you expect more from a CEO of a company, right? But would you expect this statement from her? She thinks Christianity is evil because a recent person, a mother who claims to be Christian, killed her son who was gay. So she takes down the whole Christian faith, but fails to mention what major religion is known for killing gay people. And say it out loud, Christine, or will your politically correct Democratic left-wing people not allow you to run for governor when you say it's Islam? It's Islam. It is radical Islam who kills gay people. And if they take over this country, you're saying, you said in the statement, Sharia law is not that bad. Oh, really? Go live in a Sharia law country. You will be not allowed to be transgender. Okay? So listen, a woman all she's doing is getting publicity because she's a transgender. And Hollywood loves it. The government loves it. Because what they're doing is they want to change the morality of this country. Don't let them do it. There's nothing wrong with calling these people a small minority. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's up to them to decide. And for you Christians who think it is wrong morally because of the Bible, that's fine too. But listen to me. You're not going to win a conversation anywhere in this country today with that kind of thinking. You've got to talk to these people on reasonable terms. And I think it's reasonable to say I don't want children to be taught these things. That it is the new normal, that men dress up as gay women all the time. Or that you don't know if you're a man or a woman just because you're born one. That's what they tell you. You don't know if you're a man or woman even though you were born a man or woman. I don't want that going on in the schools. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back for the last half hour of the week on this Friday on the Investigative Journal. And do me a favor, if you get a copy of that first half hour, send it around to people, because I really think there's some information on there that's really important, that's not heard much. So if you got a chance, that 30 minutes is well worth sending around. And also, if you get a chance, go to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. Hit the donate button, keep the show alive. Today I want to talk in this half hour regarding, I want to talk about a Hopi Elder that speaks out, and also want to talk about certain things that happened in the past to Native Americans here, from the eyes of a Native American woman. But I want to preface it by saying this, that I'm really tired of what's going on in the mainstream regarding erasing American history. Anything, for example, if anybody had anything to do with slavery, they want to get rid of their statues. They want to erase everything from this country because they feel it was wrong. Well, it might be wrong, but I think it's not wise to erase the history of your country because you learn from it. And just because someone was a slave owner then doesn't mean that a person today has to agree with it. And if you just get rid of it, what are you doing? You're changing really what America, how America started, where it came from, and you're not allowing people to research on their own, to go even deeper than that, because a lot of the things you hear in the mainstream news and in historical books aren't accurate, but it's a good starting point. So I'm really tired of that, because where's it going to end? They tear down this statue. They want to change the name of the city of Austin because of his ties to slavery, Stephen Austin, the founder of Texas. And it said, where's it going to go? Just get rid of everything? Yeah, that's what people want to do. They want to start all over, create a new country. So what is America all about? Well, these people are not reasonable. They're not even, considering. I don't even like having discussions about them because they're ignorant. But another thing they like to do is destroy a whole faith for certain things that it does. It's done in the past. Now, first person is going to say, well, you just said that Islam doesn't allow freedom of speech and all this stuff because once they get 80 to 90%, well, that's true if you look at their countries. Okay? I'm calling it out for what it is. Now, what happens here is once you look at the Native American transgressions that have been done, they blame it on the Bible, Christianity, and a lot of it was done by people posing as Christians, using the Bible as a weapon instead of a tool for peace. And I said many times that Roman Catholicism is not Christianity. Now, I'm not claiming that a lot of Protestants back then didn't speak up and stop a lot of these atrocities that happened to Native Americans. But you cannot label a Roman Catholic as a Christian, so we really have to be careful. And you won't hear that anywhere in this country because you know that Roman Catholicism is considered Christianity, but it is not. Now, I know that a lot of Roman Catholics will get upset if they hear that. But I think if you study your religion, like I did, I was born a Roman Catholic, you'll understand it's not a Christian religion. Now, I'm not supporting anybody here. I'm just telling you how to look at a story. It's just like saying that moderate Islam is okay. Well, it would be if it was really moderate Islam. But a lot of these moderates in America are doing the same thing that Roman Catholicism does. They hide behind the term moderate or Christian when in fact they aren't Christian and they're not moderate Muslims. It's the same thing. So what I wanted to do in this half hour is play. I've done this before because I like this Hopi Elder. It's about a 6-minute clip, and he talks about what the views of the Hopi and what they see coming to America. And I thought it'd be wise to play. Then I want to read an article done by a Native American woman regarding the atrocities in the past and how she views it. And I think we can learn from both. Here we go.
Time evolves and comes to a place where it renews again. There is first a purification time, then there is renewal time. We are getting very close to this time now. We were told that we would see America come and go. In a sense, America is dying from within because they forgot the instructions on how to live on Earth.
And now they're showing, the disco life. What's considered important in America, right? Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, bright lights of New York.
Everything is coming to a time where prophecy and man's inability to live on Earth in a spiritual way will come to a crossroad of great problems. It's the Hopi belief, it's our belief that if you're not spiritually connected to the earth and understand the spiritual reality of how to live on earth, it's likely you will not make it. When Columbus came, that began what we term as the First World War. That was the true First World War when Columbus arrived. Because along with him came everybody from Europe. By the end of the Second World War, we were, in America, we were only 800,000. From 60 million to 800,000. So we were almost exterminated here in America. Everything is spiritual. Everything has a spirit. Everything was brought to you by the Creator, the one Creator. Some people call him God. Some people call him Buddha. Some people call him Allah. Some people call him other names. We call him Tonkashila, grandfather. We're here on Earth only a few winters. Then we go to the spirit world. The spirit world is more real than most of us believe. The spirit world is everything. Over 95% of our body is water. And in order to stay healthy, you've got to drink good water. When the European first came here, Columbus, we could drink out of any river. If the Europeans had lived the Indian way when they came, we'd still be drinking out of water, because the water is sacred. The air is sacred. Our DNA is made of the same DNA as the tree. The tree breathes what we exhale. When the tree exhales, we need what the tree exhales. So we have a common destiny with the tree. We are all from the earth. And when the earth, the water, the atmosphere is corrupted, then it will create its own reaction. Mother is reacting. In the Hopi prophecy, they say the storms and floods will become greater. To me, it's not a negative thing to know that there will be great changes. It's not negative. It's evolution. When you look at it as evolution, it's time. Nothing stays the same.
Sedan Darwin skrev sitt berömda verk om arternas uppkomst har vetenskapen varit övertygad.
Well, they did that in Germany, and I want to say that's really self-explanatory. We don't have to say anything about what he said, so let's move on. I think you can take that and think about it, and you can find it easily by Googling Hopi Elder Speaks. Listen to it again, and makes you think a little bit more. I want to go to an article. It may not have a pleasant title for many, but it was written by a Native American woman, and it starts out, Christian Devils, How the Bible Was Used to Mobilize Oppression of Native Americans. Okay, I explained a little bit about how that title could be a little misleading, but it, literally speaking, you can't really argue with it, right? I think you have to look a little bit deeper on exactly who are Christians and who aren't. Now, I'm going to start out with her article, and she says this. Since time immemorial, indigenous people, the first people, occupied the land now known as the United States of America. And let me preface something here. Wasn't it interesting what that Hopi Elder said, that when Columbus first came, there were roughly 60 million Hopis? Or did he mean all indigenous Americans? So I will leave it either or. But now he said there were 800,000 after World War II. Now this woman, Native American woman, said for years the first people held and practiced a variety of spiritual customs, beliefs, ceremonies, which varied widely between tribes, clans, and bands. Dances and religious ceremonies often centered on the Great Spirit, believed by many Native Americans to be the faceless creator of life. And as we know, I'll add this, that some call it Buddha, some call it Allah, some call it God, but most Native Americans refer to it as the Great Spirit, believed by many Native Americans to be that faceless creator of life or the Supreme Being. Festivals and ceremonies including chanting, singing, and dancing. The clothing worn by both males and females of the tribes were extraordinarily detailed. Tragically, the first people's free exercise of peaceful religious practices and beliefs did not last forever. I'll add, as the Hopi Elder said, nothing lasts forever, right? Everything changes. There's nothing wrong with change. The arrival of the conquerors and the colonizers were weapons in each hand. A gun in their right and a Bible in their left would mean the widespread oppression, persecution, and condemnation of the spiritual beliefs and practices that were so central to the first people's lives. From the earliest days of conquest, Protestant Christianity and Catholicism emerged as major influences. After his initial encounter with the first people, Columbus wrote, "I gave them many beautiful things in order to win their affection and that they might become Christians." Now, Columbus, I think he was flying the flag of Spain, who in turn was in the pocket of the Pope, right? So we're talking about Roman Catholicism, which I always said is not Christianity. They are very ready for conversion to the holy faith in Christ. They are so naive, so free with their possessions, that no one who has not witnessed them would believe it. Columbus asked the crown for more crewmen and supplies for the future voyages. In return, Columbus promised to bring back as much gold as the crown needed, and as many slaves as the crown asks. Thus the eternal God, our Lord, gives victory to those who follow his way over apparent impossibilities. His second expedition was given 17 ships and more than 1,200 men. Now that Hopi Elder, he said that was what they consider the First World War. Now Columbus paved the way for more religious conquerors and colonizers. The first enslavement of Africans and conquest of Indian lands were not justified by race, but by religion and national difference. Spanish colonizers relying on Pope Nicholas V's papal decree. Now, like I said, Catholicism is not Christianity, but his decree enslaved the first people here because they were enemies of Christ. Now, Indians became the conscripted laborers, forced into the mines and the fields of slaves and the property of the Spanish conquistador, who had been granted their land. Decades of horrific battles, wars, genocides, and diseases decreased the population of the first people by millions. One major colony leader saw the acquisition of Native American bodies through death or souls as gain. Quote, Governor Winthrop's letters referred to smallpox epidemics as the means by which God hath cleared our title to this place, and a sign that the Lord was pleased with our inheriting these parts, taking it from a people who had long usurped upon him and abused his creatures. How could he say that? Many of the first people were met with two choices: convert or be killed, physical death or spiritual death. In the early 1800s, the remaining first people who did not perish by murder and battle or by disease, were forced into reservation boundaries established unilaterally by the U.S. government. Now, it must be, now, during this period of time, we also have to talk about, and they don't do it here, she doesn't do it here, but we've done numerous shows on the fact of the Native American mission schools that were given to the Jesuit order by the government to basically exterminate the remainder of Native American kids. And they did a good job, and we've talked about that story here many times. Now, that was given to the Jesuits. They're not Christians. Let's just say that right now. And if you disagree with me, start looking at the practices of Roman Catholicism and Christianity. They differ widely. But today, we will refer to them as Christians, right? But despite the First Amendment to the United States Constitution guaranteeing the free, now we're back to the woman's article, guaranteeing the free exercise of religion, which was enacted at the time, and despite the fact that many of the colonizers themselves fled religious persecution in Europe, I find that interesting, the first people were not allowed to freely practice their spiritual beliefs and ceremonies within those reservations. Now, I want to add something here. Let me see how much time I have. Oh, I only have, this goes fast. Well, maybe you'll have to do more Monday. Give you a reason to come back. But isn't it interesting what that Hopi Elder said? He said if Columbus and the Europeans would have lived like us, we'd still have clean water, clean air, and a habitable environment that's, we're seeing now. Chemtrails destroying our air, toxic algae taking over South Florida. So we're seeing that what he said holds some validity, doesn't it? But could you expect Europeans to live like that? No. Now, religious oppression was codified into laws, okay, between the 1830s and the late 1970s, not long ago. Several state and federal laws were enacted, some still on the books today, that called for banning and criminalizing the practice of the first people of Native American spiritual traditions, such as ceremonial hair braiding, dancing, and feasts. I don't see anything wrong with that, do you? On a regular basis, the Secretary of Interior and the Commissioner of Indian Affairs reminded the Indian agents of the need to suppress Indian religions. I thought we were a freedom of religious country here. For example, on the Hopi reservation, the assigned Indian agent forced a number of men to cut their hair, completely disregarding the ceremonial purpose of displaying long hair. One elder described this forced haircutting, quote, "Native people walk the sacred path of the Creator God. Our hair, the physical extension of our thoughts, allows for our direction along the path of life. Cutting of hair by oppressors has long represented the submission and defeat of a people through humiliation. The first people, children, were taken from their families and forced into boarding schools. And I talked about these mission schools, established by Catholic missionaries, the Jesuits, folks, as a requirement of their education. And at boarding schools, the children attended mandatory church services and religious indoctrination classes. These children were either encouraged or in most cases forced. They don't even talk about here how many were killed, to abandon their native spiritual practices, as well as their unique indigenous first and last names. In the name of religious progress, quote, Native children were forced into government-sponsored denominationally run boarding schools where many were physically abused, sexually, emotionally, and spiritually, and where many of them died. The rallying cry to civilize, Christianize indigenous children was kill the Indian, save the child. It was not until a century later, when many of the laws restricting Native American religious practices were overturned, the American Indians Religious Freedom of Act in 1978, and etc. I got to check the time here because I think I'm running quite short on time. We got about 2 minutes and a half. So we'll get into more of this. So she's writing about this. Now, my last questions to you are this. I started out this half hour by saying I do not like the idea that people are destroying statues, wanting to change names of towns in America by erasing our history and getting rid of them. So if that thinking continues in this story, we should erase any semblance of Christianity or Catholicism, right? I don't think that's a wise idea. I think we should learn from the past. Many of you here who are either Christians or Catholics may deplore what was done there, and there's nothing, I can understand that. I do too. But to erase it all, to get rid of something because of what happened in the past is not the right way. But to understand what happened and how it happened is the right way. And you can't erase things and make them better. You have to learn from the wrongs and the evils and understand where those came from. I say a lot of them came from Rome. And you can talk by the Pope's original decree back then. And even to this day, when you talk about, people say, well, that happened then. No. Just recently, about 5 years ago, there was a huge settlement in Washington, state of Washington, regarding the Jesuit mission schools and how Catholicism and the Jesuits were involved in the genocide, and they were paid over $225 million, these remaining victims. This was only 5-6 years ago. Do you think the Vatican apologized for this? Hell no. They have not changed, folks. They just are playing a different fiddle these days. So you have to understand that. And I can only explain it by saying do your own research, because if you don't agree with me, nothing I say will change you, and I don't want to. I want you to look at it yourself and come to some kind of conclusions, and do an educated look at it. And if you find things, please don't be afraid to talk about them. Okay, we're all out of time this week. Come back. I'm going to do more on this lady's article next Monday. Back on Monday on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.